I'm sure we have all seen something similar. We see an artist start with a circle, they just add a bunch of random lines, and then suddenly they know exactly where to put everything for the face. So I have created this portrait drawing guide and I'll link it below and you can download it for free. But essentially there are a few steps that you can follow in order to know where things go. So you always start with a circle, you can divide it in half vertically and horizontally. Then you take the middle 2/3 of the circle and you add a line at the top and the bottom. Then you extend this green line here and you create 3/3. The top third goes from the top line that you had to the center. Then the middle third goes from the center to the bottom red line. And then the last third obviously goes to the new line that you extended. Then you can connect the lines here to make the chin at the bottom of the green line that you created. And then you just soften the edges and adjust the width to the face that you have or you want to draw. The middle line that we drew here is the eyebrow line. And then the red line here is the bottom of the nose. And then the bottom third, you can divide that one also into thirds. The first line that you drew is where the mouth goes, and the second line is where the top of the chin is. And then the top part we divide into half. The top half is where the eye socket is. And then we can divide that also in another half. And then when we move to drawing the eyes, the inside of the eyes starts a little bit below that top half line that we drew, and the outside of the eye goes a little bit above it. And then the distance between the eyes is another width of an eye. And then the ear, the height of the ear is the same as the distance between the eyebrow line to the bottom of the nose. And then the top red line that we had from the beginning is your hairline. And then you can just draw the hair afterwards using that guideline. So now we can put all of this into practice and see how does it actually look like, because this is really just snapshots of the steps, but we can go through the steps and draw this painting together. And then we can do another drawing in a different angle using the same technique and the same structure. So as you can see here, I started just as I mentioned with a circle, and then try to divide the circle in half, vertically and horizontally. And then I drew a line at the bottom to create that line for the nose, where the nose ends. And then I extended the line towards the bottom of the chin. The line is equal distance from the center to the nose as it is from the nose to the chin. And then connected everything from the sides, from the bottom of the chin, and then kind of refined the shape a little bit better. And then we have the overall shape of the head. Sometimes I like to start with the nose. So at the nose line, I started drawing the nose, and you can just start with a ball if you want at the beginning to kind of give you the shape or the plane of the top of the nose. And then you can just add the different parts of the nose. And if you really want to see a more detailed tutorial on the nose, I do have a video and you can watch that and I'll link it below. And then we went to the top part and added the lines for the eyebrows, and then divided that middle part into half, and then the top section of it again into another half, so that we know where the eyes go. Something that I like to do before drawing the eyes is to draw circles or spheres that represents the ball of the eye, because then it will help me draw the eyelids in a 3D form that it is, rather than just straight lines. So you know that the eyelids wrap around the eyeball, and when you're looking at it from straight forward, it doesn't really make a difference, but when you're drawing in different angles, this ball or this sphere really helps you draw the eyelids in the right perspective. Another guideline that you can use, and of course this is different for every person, but generally speaking, you can use the width of the nose as generally the distance between your eyes. But again, it really depends on the size of the nose, because this doesn't really work all the time, but you can use it as a starting point. And as I mentioned before, the inner corner of the eye starts a little bit below that middle line that we drew for the center of the eye socket. Then moving on to the bottom third, divide that into thirds again, and then I start drawing the mouth. I don't like to connect the bottom of the mouth completely to the edges because it makes it look a little bit fake. What I like to do is just represent the bottom of the lip with just the lines there. And then the corners, I connect them on the inside and the top of the mouth a little bit more than I do at the bottom. So at this point, if you're practicing and you're not sure, you can start putting those lines, those guidelines back in to see, do these distances match? So the distance between the eyebrow line to the nose should be the same as the distance from the nose to the bottom of the chin. And you can see I made some adjustments as I was doing that. So when it came to the ear, for this one, this is where I'm saying you can take on some liberties in your design. For example, in this case, I know the height of the ear should be from the eyebrow line to the bottom of the nose. But for example, let's say this character is an elf. We want to make the eyes longer, so we know what the base is. So we make it a little bit longer than the traditional size of the ear. And this is where knowing the proportions and knowing the rules helps you know how to break them properly and get your designs to what you need it to be. Then moving on to the hair and drawing the hair. Keep in mind that a lot of people really squish the head and squish it and make the top of the head much smaller than it needs to be. But make sure you add that and make sure that that distance is large. So we know the distance from the nose to the eyebrow is the same distance from the eyebrow to the start of your hairline. And then depends on the hairstyle, the hair might even go longer up and can make even the head look even bigger. When drawing the hair, keep in mind, just draw the main shape of the hair and don't worry too much about drawing every single hair strand, and just simplify it with a few lines and just indicate the direction of the hair flow with a few extra lines in your general shape. And please let me know if you want to see a more detailed tutorial on hair. I can really make a video just for that. And then I went back to the eyes, something to give your eyes a little bit more shape and give it more dimension, and so that it doesn't look too flat, is to add these two lines at the top and the bottom of the eyes for the eyelids, and it really gives it the shape that it has a dimension and it's not just flat. And then I went in and drew the insides of the eye and added more details there. And always try and flip your canvas to just make sure everything looks correct. And at this point, you really have your sketch phase done. Using those simple guidelines, we're able to really shape it to the way we want. And because you know those shapes and you know those structures, you'll be able to really maneuver them and adjust them to the shape of the face that you want. So for example, if you want to have your characters to be more stylized, you can, for example, elongate the face if you want. So you extend those guidelines vertically, or if you want it more squished, you can also do that and reduce the size. Now let's try to do the same thing, but now using the 3/4 angle. So again, this time when we draw the circle, we really need to think about it as a sphere rather than just a simple circle. So when we draw the center line, we also make sure that that follows the shape of the sphere. And then when we want to create the horizontal center line, we really need to think about the angle of the face. That's why that line becomes very important. And then on the side of the sphere, we also need to flatten it a little bit. So you can draw another circle that is parallel to the center line that we originally drew. So that way it can flatten the side of the head. And then the center line or the horizontal line that we draw for the eyebrow line can now follow the angles of the sphere. Then we can draw the vertical line from the horizontal center line that we had, using the same ideas that we take it down a little bit for middle third where the nose is, and then extend it further down the same distance to create where the bottom of the chin is. And then now we can slowly start adding the shape of the face according to our reference. And keep in mind, everything here is now in very three-dimensional. you can see how I created that dent where the eye is because we know the eye socket goes in. So here I'm not really following or putting most of the structure lines because I know where things usually go. So instead of dividing the middle third into 2 halves, I know that the top little bit of it is where the eye socket is. So I just make that change of plane to make sure it reflects that the eye is more in compared to the rest of the face. Then we can start drawing the nose, and we know exactly where the nose goes. And if you really think of the nose as a few different planes, the bottom plane, the top plane, and the side planes, you can really simplify it and draw it in really rigid shapes first, and then you can soften the shapes afterwards. And then here again is where I mentioned where the drawing the sphere and the ball is really helpful for the eyes, because now that I know it's a sphere and it doesn't follow a flat line, I can draw the eyelids following that sphere. So you can see me here really thinking about where the sphere is and how it really interacts with the top eyelid and the bottom eyelid in this angle so that I'm able to draw it perfectly in the right perspective. I always struggle a little bit with the eye that is further away, but again, using the same method and the same idea, I try to draw the top eyelid and the bottom eyelid around that ball that is the eye. Then we move on towards the mouth. So something to keep in mind is also the mouth is also not flat, and it has different planes, and it also follows the curvature of the bottom half of the face. So when drawing it, make sure we know that curvature and we draw it around the face that way. And the different planes really overlap each other. So for example, the further part of the mouth in this angle, we can't really see it properly because parts of the upper lip really comes more towards the front because of the same thing that we said. The mouth really curves around the face and it's going towards the back when we're looking at it from this angle. So now that I have these main parts done, really the face is almost complete, and I just have to adjust the angles or the shape of the face. So I go and add where the neck is and see, for example, my reference, how thick is the neck? Where does it go? What's the angle? And I really try and draw that to capture it. And then the top of the head, I round it up again. And as I mentioned before, it's very important not to forget how big our top of the head is and the back of the head, and it's not very flat, right? The back of the head extends really far, and that's so that it can really house the brain. So make sure you don't flatten it and compress it, and make sure you draw the head the way it's supposed to be. And then drawing the ear, also very simple. We know where it goes. And let me know what parts of the face do you really struggle with, and maybe I can make a specific tutorial to try and explain those parts a little bit more so that you can draw your portraits and your faces much better. And then finally going to the hair, as I mentioned, drawing the hair as shapes, and you can really compare it to almost like ribbons, and you draw these ribbons that flow down from the head towards the shoulders. And you can really think about them that way because then you know exactly how they flow and you can draw them in bigger shapes rather than trying to worry about individual strands. And there you go. These are 2 examples of how to draw and sketch the head using the Loomis method and using the structure. I'm gonna try and do a video where I explain how to paint the skin in the different shades of the skin, so that you can finish these portrait sketches and paint them and finish them and render them. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next one.